Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are watching in the world. This is a brand new episode of Social Confoes. I'm Jean-Luc here together with Diego. And Diego, it's already episode number 15. It's going quite well. How do you feel?
It is. It is. I love how you use that intro. I think we're getting the hang of this intro thing now, opening the same time every
Yeah,
week. So that progress in that. So I feel great, and I feel even better because the guest we have today, um, yeah, you might have seen her around. You might have seen her movie. You might have seen her styling. She's in almost every field of the creative industry. Um, I first met her, or I first heard about her, like, was it 4 or 5 years ago, 2016, I think. Out of nowhere, you get this Surinamese, a movie about Suriname, and a friend of ours, a common friend of ours, was playing in that movie. And
yeah,
then
Misha.
yeah, Misha. And then you
Yeah.
suddenly see Lobi Singi by Suleigha Winkel. So you think, who is Suleigha Winkel? Out of nowhere, she appears here with a total red carpet opening, premiere, everything. And there's this movie. Um, so yeah, shortly after that, I briefly met her at another friend's party, had a brief talk, but it wasn't until 2019, if I recall correctly, when she was organizing the Indo Film Festival in Comoé, Paper Pot, that we really had a chance to talk. So she's a very, I guess, a peculiar woman and a very stylish in a sense. So she stands out, definitely stands out from the crowd. And without further ado, Suleigha Winkel, we'd like to welcome you to Social Convos.
Welcome.
Wow, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for that intro. I loved it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna introduce you by singing a very, very small portion of a song. And I've only sang three times. One was at my wedding, another one was at a show that never aired, and this is gonna be the third time. So it's gonna be
Okay.
kind of like special because I've never done this live, but I'm not gonna act like I'm able to sing. So it goes something like this. So many days you make me wakti, so many misari, alla pramisi, mine frigiti, that make no alobilasi. And I'm gonna stop right there. So of
Oh.
course you sang it a lot better. You even made a movie about it. That's what we're gonna into. I'm quickly gonna tell the people what the text means because we also have viewers and listeners, people who listen to the podcast afterwards from outside of Suriname. So many days you make me wakti basically means so many days you've made me wait. So many neti misari. You can translate it a different ways, but so many nights I've pondered, I've worried, and then alla pramesi you be forgiti, all the promises that you made that you forgot. That make no ulobilasi. That makes that now our love is lost. So now that we've spoken about it, you actually made that song. I mean, all the millennials in Suriname, if you lived in Suriname in the 90s, you know Lobi Singi as a Suripop song, one of our favorite Suripop songs. And you made it into a movie. So, of course,
Mhm.
we want to know the story behind that because it was connected to was a university or school project or university project, what you did?
Y- Exactly, yeah. So that was a great introduction, by the way. I love the way you sang the song. So that's very special. Thank you for that opening. But yeah, it was indeed. I was at my last year of school. I was studying film, and we had to make a movie. And it was supposed to be 12 minutes or something, but I really wanted to make like a long movie. So eventually we chose to use this song. So the inspiration came basically from, the feeling of missing Suriname. And actually, I'm gonna go a little bit back. why I started making movies actually. It was in 2010. I really wanted to be a music producer in the beginning, and music was my thing. And then I followed this competition, the Cosmopolis competition, and we had to make this movie, and I won that in Rotterdam. And all of a sudden,
Hey.
I thought, "Yay!" I was like, film is my thing. But I'm gonna jump now to the moment where I was like, I have to make this movie, and I sorry, my English and Dutch. I have to really like think about it first because in Dutch it's so easy, right? So yeah, so we did this competition, and afterwards, I wanted to go to Holland to study film because in Suriname they really didn't have the study. So I went there, and I was like, the last year I have to make a movie in Suriname, and it has to be about something in my life that was really important. That is missing Suriname. So the music was perfectly for the movie, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so we do want to know. I know Diego likes to make movies, and I tried to get into Utrecht to have a minor in film and theater science. I unfortunately didn't get in, but that's a totally different story. But for us, it's like you're very creative. You also worked on the sets of different productions, video productions, different films.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to set up to film the movie, and how much effort did it take? Because there, of course, had to be a budget, and even if it's a short
Yeah.
movie, you still have to pull some strings around. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, the process was a little bit difficult when it came to the finances, especially because the first time writing the movie, I already had a vision of how I wanted the movie to look like. So the writing was a little bit easier. I had a few friends who are really good writers. Brian Blinker, he's one of the co-writers of the movie, and he was so great in writing, like to capture really the Surinamese essence in the movie. So that part was easy, but eventually we had to form a team, of course, the camera crew, the cast and everything. And I noticed at that time, when you have to graduate, you're full of energy. So everybody feels that it's about, telling people why you want to make the movie. So I had a lot of people who were really enthusiastic about the movie. So the crew and the cast were a little bit easier, but the finance was, yeah, it was a hurdle. So eventually, we got a few sponsors from Suriname to sponsor the movie, and of course, I had my own inbreng, my own money I put into the movie. But that was, yes, it was difficult to do that. Yeah, yeah. Eventually, it was.
I can only
Yeah,
imagine the logistic that goes through that. This only being like for a graduation project. That's
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, and then
yeah,
Yeah,
filmed across two countries. You guys did the filming here and there, and I guess how
yeah.
often did you have to travel back and forth, or was it like you had it planned and shoot and just go back and go through the editing? Well, were there any challenges when coming here specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, because we had a crew like 50-50, 50% from Holland, with colleagues from the school, and also from Suriname. So basically, the most traveling we did was actually when we recorded the song, the new version of Lobi Singi. So I contacted Astrid, of course, and I asked her if she wanted to be part of the new soundtrack, of course, because it's her song.
yeah,
And that was going from Belgium back to Holland a few times. So we had to like make a whole new composition because I did want to keep the essence of the song, but change a few things also in the lyrics and a little bit in the melody of the song. So the new version had to be like, a new vibe to the movie. So that was the part when we had to go like back and forth a lot. But we traveled only one time to Suriname to film, and we stayed about 1.5 months to make the movie, and then we traveled back to film 1 or 2 more weeks. So it was really working together. They stayed at my grandpa. A few members of the crew stayed at my grandpa. A few people stayed at my home. A few people went to a few friends they knew in Suriname. So that was really interesting to see. And for some people, it was also the first time coming to Suriname, of course. So they witnessed Suriname for the first time. So it was really interesting. Also on set, we have different customs sometimes. In the movie, we have a scene where the lead actor is going to the house without taking his shoes off. That's the thing, in Suriname, you take your shoes off and you go inside. So the crew also had that moment where they didn't take their shoes off. So
Oh,
that was funny, because they could really feel how it felt, and that added to the movie also. Where we had a lot of fun making the movie, and I had to explain a lot, which for me was also very special because when you live in Suriname, you're used to the customs, of course, but when you have to explain to somebody why things are like this and why not, you get a little bit more in detail for why are we doing what we're doing actually in Suriname. So that was really fun,
I do
and
want to jump
yeah,
into that.
of
I
course,
actually do want to jump into that. What's
of
the
course.
not the craziest, but what was one of the Surinamese customs that you had to explain to the Dutch people that after that you explained it, you were like, wow, it's really weird that I had to explain that. Or not
Yeah,
necessarily that you felt ashamed, but you're like, oh, wait a minute,
yeah.
that's something we're accustomed to, but it's completely weird for somebody outside of Suriname.
Yeah, there was one thing. It was with pets. So you have stray dogs in Suriname, and you have stray cats
Mm.
sometimes. And in Holland, they're more used to picking the animals up, right, and petting them and keeping them close. So we had a few people who really loved animals, who really from the street they picked up the animals and took them in the car. So that was funny moments, and the animals were a little bit scruffy and stuff. So that was funny, and we had to tell them, in Holland. It's a little bit different in Suriname. You don't take them home, you leave them on the streets. So that was a funny moment where we had to explain that custom actually.
And really
And there was
short,
also, yeah, of course.
if you had to flip the script and you going to Holland, was there
Yeah,
anything in
yeah.
particular that you thought that was odd there?
Yeah, there was one moment actually, and this is in families. I went to a girlfriend. We had to study, and they began eating. They had their dinner, and usually when you go to people's home, they include you right the meal. And I was there, and I was like, okay, nobody's asking me if I want to eat something, so that was really funny and weird because I didn't know what to do. Right, it was very awkward. I was standing there, and the girlfriend told me like no, we don't eat together with guests, not all the time. So that was something I had to learn, so she was kind
That's
to not
really
to
weird.
not leave
Yeah.
me alone, but that was something, where I was like, okay, I don't understand why they have this, but in Suriname you always get a seat at the table, right? You always get something to eat or something to
They kind of
drink.
force feed you
That
here.
was different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're
yeah,
our
so that was,
guest.
yeah,
You're our guest. Yeah,
yeah,
I think for a lot of people, I think there are definitely a lot of people who have experienced that. That must have
yeah.
been like really weird. For me, I was like 10 or something, 9 or 10, and I was at a friend's house who I was staying at. So I did eat at their table, but then he had a friend
Mm-hmm.
over. And then all of a sudden we're going to eat. And his friend just jumped back, took his bike, and went home and came back after
Yeah.
we were done eating. And we were like, for me that was like really weird, but the
Yeah.
experience you had was much more confronting actually because you were actually
Yeah.
there and you were not allowed to join the table.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Huh.
it was weird. They didn't ask me. I was standing there. But when you get older, a few years later, you understand why people are used to that. You accept more what's happening. At that point you felt a little bit humiliated, of course, and a little bit weird. You don't really understand. But now I have a more I understand it more, like why they're like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But they're really
it's a
kind
big
people.
cultural. No, it's a
Yeah.
very big cultural difference, and it's
Yeah.
something you have to get over. So before we go to the next questions, we have a couple of shout outs from the people joining in. Andres Freeman, it might be a GIF. That might be the reason why we're not actually seeing it in the stream. Tefan wants to say good evening, Suleigha, and also greetings from Fishan Puran watching on YouTube. And he just had a little laugh with the forced feeding because we're all used to that. If you're Surinamese and you're visiting somebody, you're gonna get force fed. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
normal. So
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
a
So,
little bit about yeah
yeah, go on, Gianluca.
a little bit about set production because basically you've had a lot of experience also in kind of the art department of a film set, and
Yeah.
I always wanted to do with the differences between production design and art design and background design. What to to most people that have never experienced working on a professional film set, what kind of behind the scenes jobs are there when it comes to production and designing in general?
Yeah. So the basic difference is in the preparation and the actual filming. That's the biggest difference. So before you film or make a movie, right, you have to begin at the preparation part, the script writing, and also figuring out what are the colors that we're gonna see. What is the mood we want to set? Every little detail is important. Like why is this like white? Why should it be blue? Those things are carefully thought out, of course, because everything adds to the scene, of course. Nothing is not on purpose. So that's the difference, I think, mostly in the preparation part, especially art direction, which I've done a lot, of course.
Yeah.
We had to really sit with the director and also the visionary, of course, of the movie, and really figure out what is the color palette, for example, or what are the important props you want to put in the movie to add to the story. So those things are like prepared before the movie and being bought in that specific color, sometimes in that specific material because of the lighting, the shine. So everything has to be very precise. So that's the biggest difference, I think. And you talked about production, of course. You have pre-production and you have, of course, production on set and production post-production when you edit the movie, of course. So I think the pre-production is somebody who really knows how to put everything together before the movie starts. So everybody's on time. They make a list, of course, of all the people who have to be there. And in case something happens, there's always a backup. You have to be prepared for everything. And on set, it's more about the moment. So basically, when the camera turns on, you have to be really in the moment to figure out, okay, what's next and what do we have to do? And the people who prepared the scenes are more a little bit chilled back, waiting for what's going to happen. So that's the biggest difference, the preparation and the really being, on the time, on the moment. Yeah, that's the biggest difference, I would say.
Speaking of set designs and I guess productions, you've also had experience for one of the movies you worked on during your course in Indonesia. So,
Yeah,
is that correct?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So,
Yes.
did you? I guess if you compare your experience in Indonesia and the Netherlands and Suriname, what are things from especially across the world similarities in Indonesia that you've like kind of seen here, or what was your experience in general there? I'm curious on that as well.
I love that question. I love that question. There is a big difference actually. We have, of course, the Japanese culture in Suriname. My mom is, I think, the third generation from Indonesia, from Java, and the difference is they're more spiritual. I think in Indonesia, when you're on set, you always have to pray before you do a scene. That's one of the main differences. In Holland, you don't really have that you really have to sit with each other. I really talk about basically the ghosts who are surrounded in the scene. So those are a few differences. And if I have to compare it to Suriname, the people are really excited to make a movie. Like everybody wants to be part of the set. So when we went filming in Jakarta, we had a scene on the streets where it was really a lot of traffic. That's what Jakarta known for, right? Traffic. And we had a camera guy who was in the car with us, and you saw so many people walking around just wanting to be in the movie. So people are really excited to see a camera. You also have that, of course, in Suriname, but not like in Indonesia. So being part of something, something big, I think, was one of the differences I noticed in Indonesia compared to Holland
Here
and
here
Suriname.
we complain about the traffic and the traffic jams that arise from filming a movie.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
quick follow up on it. Was there any inspiration from that experience that I guess got you to like organize the Indo Film Festival in 2019? Like looking back to your roots and where that comes from. Yeah, because that was a very particular event, and the way you set
Yeah.
it up to showcase
Mhm.
filmmakers from Japanese descent as well. So how
Yeah.
did that come about?
Yeah. So basically, it was the roots. I wanted to do something with my roots, Indonesia. And what I noticed in filmmaking is that independent filmmakers in Indonesia, they spoke more with abstract images. So that was kind of a trend coming up that year, that abstract images without really language, without verbal language, was really popular during that time. So I really wanted to show people how they told their story without a language barrier, basically. So with moving images, with costumes, with great art direction, and great directing, of course, and lighting and everything. And that was one of my purposes, basically, to also show like we have a lot of similarities, even though we live in Suriname, and we have to look at the things that we have in common with each other. Because if I had one movie where they spoke Indonesian, basically, and people didn't really gravitate towards those movies. They did gravitate towards the people that looked like them, but the language was really a barrier. So I noticed the films where there were more abstract images, where they were the most well received. Yeah,
You guys are killing me with the set design because you have everything, the lighting set up, the colors, and I'm just
yeah.
bam, all in your face, bright colors. And I always want to change the shirt because it doesn't match with the background at all. So yeah, thanks for making me very cautious of this, Suleika.
But it's your
Um,
personality though, so it fits
yeah,
you.
that's
So it's
true. That's
okay.
true. My
Yeah.
personality is see what which shirt is actually available and is clean and which I can put on. That's a very male thing to do. So it's good that you're allowing me to say that on camera. That's it's okay as a man
You
to
look
just pick
great.
out the
You look
shirt
great.
that suits. But I think that's a great introduction into something that I've clearly noticed in a certain trend with everything you do is feel people feel at ease. Me being okay with being yourself. And I do want to touch upon on how the journey was for yourself. I think everybody
Yeah.
that tells others that it's okay to be yourself had a similar experience and knows why it is important. So for you, what with all the things that you are interested in, how do you pick your spots and how do you decide like what I want to do next?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've been on this journey for a few years, actually. I came to Suriname back like a few years ago, and I noticed the thing that really makes me decide to do something, if it has to depend on is this one of is it does this fit in my purpose. So basically finding your purpose, right? Like, why am I here on this planet, right? What is my goal, and what do I have to do with all my talents? Because I can do a lot, but what is it that I'm supposed to do? So basically, it was a real journey for me to really look inside, and really ask myself, like, okay, because I have a lot of talents, it doesn't mean I have to do everything, So is my place, So it was something I really changed from, and that's the funny part, because we spoke about Lobi Singi 5 years ago, but the filmmaker I'm right now is a totally different person, actually, and the next movie I'll make will be totally different. So the only thing I have to say is find something that is true to you, and don't do something because it makes you look a kind of way, or it makes you stand in people's image in a kind of way. Do something that really makes you feel like this is you and is genuine to you, and your story is a story worth being told. I think that's the road lane, the thing you have to follow, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, the red thread of fate. But
exactly.
I guess where did that, or how did that red thread of fate bring you to fashion, and
Yeah.
what purpose did you see there in particular?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people ask me, like, why clothing actually? Because it's very superficial. A lot of people think it's very superficial. It's really on the outside, but uh, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Paris. So a few years ago, after actually Lobi Singi, I went to Paris for 2 years to live there, to dance kizomba, and also to see a different culture, right? And I noticed that a lot of people there dressed to tell their story. Like, it's not only a shirt, it has a story, it has an essence, it has a soul, basically. So it's a reflection of their essence. It's not just a t-shirt or something for them. And it really inspired me to really think about, okay, what am I putting on my body actually? Because if my clothes are a reflection of who I am, I want to be true to myself, right? So I began venturing into the world of fashion, and getting excited about it, and really reading a lot and going to a lot of fashion shows, and also being around a lot of people who enjoyed fashion. And when I came to Suriname, I noticed a lot of people asked me, like, where do I get my clothes from sometimes, and where do I buy my clothes? And at a certain point, I was like, if I count all the people who ask me, I should maybe make a business around it. So that was really the reason why I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna try something with this. And I saw that people were happy when I gave them advice on certain clothing or pieces, and really enhancing why you should wear something and what it means to wear something. And I noticed the smiles on their faces, and also how it could change your life, like really making people see who you are from the outside is a big thing, your image, right? So it was really something that eventually I'm really passionate about right now. And it also has something to do with the stories I also tell. It has the same idea actually, to really inspire people and make people see how you feel actually. So it's the same as telling stories, but only with clothing.
Yeah. Diego, do you want to jump into some Paris questions because now I'm
Sure.
kind of curious. Yeah, you lived in Paris for 3 years,
Two.
and two. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're fluent in French.
A little bit. I know the basics.
Tu
Oui, oui.
parles pas.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Que ne parlez pas bon? Omelette du fromage. No, I do want to know. Like a lot of people. I mean, I've been to Paris, to
Yeah.
Paris for different reasons. I also studied urban development, so I also looked at Paris from a development perspective. But I do want to know. Like most of us, we have experience living abroad, but not many of us have, especially Surinamese, have experience in Paris. So how was the Parisian experience different from living in the Netherlands? Like what how was the rent, for instance, for a living? Was it more expensive or was it okay or doable? And getting
It
around.
was, yeah. Yeah, it was doable actually. Compared to where I lived in Holland, I lived in Bussum. That's close to Hilversum, so that was more expensive to where I when I went to Paris. So that was okay. I shared it also with a good friend of mine, a girlfriend. So sometimes she came, so she paid half of the rent. So because she also loved dancing, so we went together. So we shared the room. That was also nice, but it wasn't really a big financial change going to Paris. I think the biggest thing I noticed was that a lot of people really take their roots very seriously. Like they really take it with them and really are proud of their roots. You know, they have it in their clothing, in the way they talk, in the way they dress, the things they do. If I can only see it in Kisamba, the dance, they have a lot of African elements in the dance, so they're really proud of their culture. That was one of the things also in art. They have a lot of influences from their motherland. It was usually Ghana or a few places, South Africa, and they really bring it, and they're really proud of it, and they're basically celebrated for their roots. You don't see, you usually don't see people who don't carry something with them, you know. So that was a real thing in comparison to Holland.
Can we learn from that as Surinamese people, like from Paris, that we all, because Marlon here says in my DNA. So if we start appreciating, of course we do it, but in Suriname we often only do it during national holidays when it's a certain tradition connected to a
Yeah.
certain way of life. But indeed, like in small details is what you meant as well, and in art, that
Yeah.
the reflection of where you're from comes in. So that's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, and to add on what you said, indeed, I think the thing they did with the roots were they made it modern. So they made it into their own world. So they didn't only like wore the traditional patterns on their clothing, but they also made it more fashionable. Like they added a few elements of the Western societies to their clothing, so it made it more modern to them. So they didn't leave it at just that. They developed a culture. So that was very interesting. And you got totally different mixes of of everything: music, clothing, art, everything. So I think in Suriname, what I've noticed is that when we have cultural events, that it's very traditional, right? And the tradition is good, but we don't really do enough with what we have, like develop that culture, that traditional. So I think if we do that more, we can make it more modern. I think that will be a good step.
How do you
Okay.
think we could do that? And I guess from your experience
Yeah.
in Paris, finding about Kizomba, I had to Google what Kizomba was when you sent us some information.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's out of all the places, finding
Mhm.
that in Paris, and two
Yeah.
keywords that stuck to me throughout this whole conversation that you kept mentioning were stories and passion. And um, looking back to what I've seen, it kind of encompasses that in the way they move and live. So
Yeah.
from that experience and your, I guess, passion for Kizomba as well on the side, what do you think we could do here to, in your words, modernize these cultural and elements of roots?
Yeah. So basically, I think we have to look into the origin. Where does it come from, really, and what is it? Why did they use this particular tradition? Like, I think we know the basic stuff about why something is like this or what happened, but I think we have to dig a little bit deeper and start close. Start with your grandparents and ask them, like, how did you perceive something like this? Instead, we don't have to like really go outside. We have to start from the inside and check for why did you use this, and how did it affect you, and how was your grandparents about this. And when you get into the little details about something, you can then work on, okay, how can I modernize this into my experience, right? Because stories are basically a replica of each other, right? We tell stories that already are told in the past, actually, but we make it into our own and add little details about ourselves, and the time, of course, changes, but basically a lot of stories are already told. So I think we have to be brave to do that. I think, and not afraid to try to do that, and really look into what does it mean to me. Like a good example is a
It's Lobi
sarong.
Singi, and that you
Lobi
also did with
Singi,
Lobi
yeah,
Singi.
I use exactly. I use all of the elements basically in the movie, in set design also, and in the art direction. We had a lot of traditional stuff we put inside the scenes, but a sarong is something like very traditional in Suriname, but you can make it into a modern design, but use those elements without disrespecting, of course, the culture, and that's an important thing to know what you're doing, what you're making, and that's the thing also. You have to respect it and make it into your own.
Yeah. So, like when I was came back from the Netherlands, when I came back from Europe after I studied, I went with my mom to the mall because I wanted to buy a sari for my then girlfriend, like as a surprise
Mm-hmm.
gift.
Mm-hmm.
And the looks that I got in the shop from the women working in the shop, me checking and holding a sari to feel it, and like
Yeah.
it felt so uncomfortable. It really felt so uncomfortable that I was like, okay, this
Mm-hmm.
is not worth it. It's
Really?
going it's destroying my masculinity. I'm not ready
Oh.
to accept this. No, it was really weird. They were
Oh,
really
wow.
looking and laughing and like
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to buy a gift for my girlfriend. I'm trying to buy a sari for my girlfriend because I want her to have like to understand what Surinamese tradition is. and
Yeah.
um and I do think what you mentioned is important, respect for your culture. It's not like you can just take any kind of a traditional or a ritual or anything and just modernize it and then don't realize what the culture actually means or what it
Yeah.
means. And
Yeah.
so I do agree with that. But I think we managed with food, for instance. I've seen a couple of local chefs really use local ingredients on certain dishes that are traditionally done with other ingredients. I've also seen several artists also make clothing, special design clothing, but it's not at a scale that it is. Um, so basically, my question about that: how much of it is supply and how much of it is demand, or is it like a chicken egg? Because there's no supply, there's no demand. Because there's no demand, there's no supply. So if we're gonna start with it, I think you already gave people joining in and listening a good idea to start with. Start talking with your parents. I think that's a great tip. But also, if you want to start, how can you find out what would work also from a commercial perspective, and what wouldn't?
Yeah. So basically, what I think is that you have to let people know why something is important, right? Because you might find it important, but what are the links that connect people? When something like, why would they buy this? It's because of the story. It's connecting people to each other. So basically, if you would have bought the sari, and you would have made something new, totally new in your own design, you would have to explain to people why you made something like this and what it means to you, what the story is, and especially what you want to, why are you doing, your why is very important. Like, why did you make it? Because you had this experience with your girlfriend and you thought, you know what, I'm going to go back again and like, the story is really important. And also what it means to take your culture with you, of course. And why would I? Because basically, I can buy another dress, but why would I wear a sari, right? What does it add to me as a person? So I think telling that story is very important to let people know, like, what kind of strength it gives you and how the connection forms between you and your past, of course, your past lives, and also your family, what it means to you. And I think everybody has that sense of wanting to belong, right? So I think if we can add the story and tell our story, like why we're doing something, not only for the financial gain, of course, or for the popularity or something, but really because when we die, we want to let something for the generation after us. That's very important. So I think telling that story will be very effective.
Coming back to your fashion and you designing and mixing, matching styles,
Yeah.
is there a particular s- um, dress set, piece of clothing that comes to mind in recent months that you're particularly proud of the story that formed it? If you're
Why you
willing to
want to buy
share.
something for your girlfriend? um, so a particular piece of clothing, you mean? Like
Yeah,
do you mean that? I'm
yeah, that
particularly proud
you've
of?
that you've done in the past.
Yeah. So I think it's more about the timelessness of clothing, I think. It's not really one piece. It's about buying something that you can wear when you're 50 also. So it's about knowing what you're wearing. I think that element was something I'm really proud of. Like really creating pieces or thinking of pieces that you can wear when you're 21 and when you're 50 or when you're 32 like me. So basically that was one of the things I was really focusing on. How can I create a timeless style for people? So when you go outside, you're not really following trends specifically, but you have something timeless you can take with you. So I think that was something I'm still working on, but I'm very proud of when it comes to fashion.
I do. I'm quickly going to go through the comments because Marlon also added, when you dig into the root of things or the history of it, you come to have an understanding that changes your perspective about it. But later you can have a dialogue in some sense in the modern day. And then he adds, I think to create a dialogue of the story is the key. So since we're going into this topic of, because I think this is something a lot of Surinamese youngsters want to do. They want to integrate. They want to find something in our DNA, on our Surinamese DNA, especially to day and age, that you can export to outside, that you can sell outside of Suriname as well. So when we start talking about it, um, you've been in film, you've been in the film industry,
Yeah.
the film industry now with Viren, but also a couple of other movies from Surinamese producers that are actually getting popularity, music that's getting popular, Surinamese music that's getting popularity in the Netherlands. um, what would be what kind of dialogue can we start aside from music and film to get people aware like the talents that we have in Suriname and how much that culture could work outside of Suriname as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think we should look at really what makes us unique, right? What is really a concept that really makes us unique as a society, right? In Suriname, um, lost except from the facts that we have different cultures, but what binds us? I think what makes a family. And I think when we have that story, we can really, really get people to move. Because I feel sometimes also in art and in also with friends, a sort of separation sometimes. But it's not because they don't want to, but it's because of ignorance, I think, sometimes. And that's what I've noticed, like not knowing enough about each other. And I think creating like some sort of dialogue around why do people do what they do and have different customs, you know what like I had on Lobi Singi, it brings people to an understanding, especially when I went to Holland, when I had that moment, and now recognize why that happened, you know, and it's not offensive anymore. So I think if we do that and we really make a product, you know, together, and I think from different kind of places and bring that together. I really have professionals who really know how to bring it into a professional field, to say, you know, and thinkers who work together. I think we can really make something, but we have to form one unit first. I think that's important. The community has to come together first.
How important is this outside perspective, you think? Because it's been recurring. Basically, every Surinamese guest we've had on here
Yeah.
has had experience abroad, which kind of drastically or somehow changed their perspective of their own country where they come from, and in some senses appreciate it more. So
Mm.
coming you mentioning, having this dialogue and coming together, how
Yeah.
much of an impact do you think that the outside perspective has on the people who haven't been out yet, and how could they share part of that experience, do you think?
Yeah, I think we should talk about what we've seen via dialogues or via films or via podcasts. We should talk about what's different, and we should also challenge what's different. You know, like we grow every time, and we shouldn't be afraid to say stupid stuff sometimes, right? So I think the people who go outside have to really talk to the people here and start talking about their experiences, the good and the bad. And I think the appreciations part is more because of, you know, when you come home and you have your customs you're used to, it's more like a coming home feeling, and it's more relaxed, and you really appreciate it more because outside it's bigger, but it's not you. It's not you, and it's this totally different feeling actually. I think that would be a way to talk about it more.
Speaking of podcasts, I think that this is a nice place to go, because you also did a podcast for a few seasons starting in 2019,
Yeah.
called Duur is Passie, like how expensive is passion. But quickly, I guess a little nod on Sinchas McLeod's Duur is Zeker. Because before we go into the podcasting, this just came up. The naming convention of all your, I guess,
Yes.
pieces,
Yeah.
productions, uh, Hudiras Pasi, Marcusa,
Mhm.
Margi Style. It has, and Marcusa is passion fruit. It has something to do with passion. It has this,
Yeah.
you can see it exuding from your what you express. So, can you give us the story or your way of thinking with the naming conventions with all of the things you've done? Just curious on that.
Yeah. So basically sometimes it's super random because I think randomness is also very, very intriguing. But the names you use, the marcusa, you know, because of the passion fruits, it's very literal. Let's just say that it's about passion fruit. And marcusa, the name in Suriname, it's called marcusa, but you don't call it like that in other countries. So I thought it was very unique and very Surinamese, to call it that, marcusa. And everybody loves fruit, right? And sweet, and it sounds very feminine. So I enjoy that name. But usually the thought process is, I first think about the feeling actually. What do I want to portray to people? What would I want to tell? You know, and the name of something defines everything, the energy of the whole thing you're doing. So basically, it has to have something with the land you're standing on. So basically, where you live, and also with the feeling, and then something that people can really relate senses to. So basically, taste or sound or something they see. That's very important. So you activate that sense, and then you get people to be curious, a little bit people to be curious. You know, you get the taste in their mouth, or they smell something, or they think about something, or they think about someone, right? A person or something they've done in the past or something, and then you can add your story to it. So I think that's my thought process, and it's really funny because my name, for example, and means seduction. So basically, I know that when I when I make up a name, it has to be really something that attracts people. So that's my essence, right? I love to attract people to something, and I think all the names, they how do you call it? They bring up some sort of feeling inside of you. So I think that's why the names are like that.
Wow,
I
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
didn't even
have to
realize
correct a
that.
quick story. This is totally not scripted. I just want to bring this up because a lot of people don't know this, but Ineffable, the first name for Ineffable was actually Marcusa.
Really?
We almost called, well, I almost called Ineffable Marcusa, but my founding
Mm.
partners were not having it actually. So the reason why, and I never, the translation to passion fruit part, it's an even a dimension that I was not even considering at the time. But for me, it was also Surinamese. It was very easy and quirky in the mouth. But also the interesting thing about the Marcusa is that from the outside, aside from the wild Marcusa of sort, but the Marcusa from the outside is very simple. It's very simplistic, beautiful yet simple. And the inside is very useful and very sweet. And from that perspective, I was thinking of naming the company Marcusa. And then
Hmm.
after a very broad brainstorming session, the name changed to
Yeah.
Ineffable. But I think that's
Oh.
it's really unscripted. We never talked about this. Diego, this is completely new for Diego as well. But
Okay. Okay.
it's
Okay.
great that I can get to share that story. And now I'm really happy that
Uh,
we don't have two organizations with the same name. Um,
yeah.
I do really love and that's something Diego said it, and I think other people will notice it as well if they dive deeper into everything that you've done, the strong connectivity with Suriname. I think that's very interesting. We have a couple of comments as well. Jeff wants to jump into that. He says it's a very informative talk. Um, Love the talk. What are the strengths of the Surinamese and its people living in Suriname and diaspora? We aren't aware enough of our strengths and the wonderful things that we are able to accomplish working hard together.
Yeah.
Proud of you guys and Suleigha. Whoa, you've done a lot. Yes, you have done a lot. And Jeff, thank you for from joining in all the way from Belgium. Uh, Randy, I'm gonna do your comments in different order than you send them in. But he says, respect, hold the fish and trust the process, guys. And you need to step out of the box and not going out means no outdoor experience. Um, I might have read that wrong, but I think the message is clear. We need to step outside of the box. Marlon quickly wants to let you know, Suleika, that he agrees on you with creating the dialogue, and also a quick shout out from Stephanie, giving her compliments. So thanks, Stephanie, from joining in as well. So Diego,
Yeah, I guess let's resume the Duur Passie podcast journey, where basically you also told stories from your experience, sharing your experiences in season one. It's just kind of a monologue. Can you walk us through what got you starting a podcast? Because podcasts aren't really a thing. I can count the amount of people here on my hands who've actually, cons- consistently released episodes for their podcast, and you're one of them.
Yeah.
So in 2019, that's 2 years ago, what got you into podcasting, and how do you think this format could change the way people consume media and have dialogue, I guess?
Yeah. Interesting question. I've been thinking about that. Why did I do it? It started with a challenge, of course, but it was deeper than that. I've been on this journey on womanhood. You know, what is being a woman actually, especially with feminine energy, of course, and masculine energy, which we deal with as women, as modern women, a lot. So I wanted to create something for myself, a challenge where I didn't have to use my face or my looks or something or my womanhood, but only my voice, and where nobody sees you basically, but you talk about your passion or a topic you like to talk about. So that was a challenge for me actually, to really get people to make people talk about certain topics via my voice actually, and not via something else. The seduction part and everything. So basically, I really wanted to challenge myself by doing that. And yeah, and I was also listening to a lot of podcasts at that time, so I enjoyed podcasts a lot, about entrepreneurship, about love, about being a woman and stuff. So I was like, let me try this. And what I noticed, that was a funny thing at the end of the podcast, because the challenge was 1 year, right? So I noticed after everything that people said the information was helpful, but they enjoyed my voice more. So it was more the feeling of relaxation. That's what they enjoyed more than what I had to say, basically. So that was a fun discovery after that. Like, okay, how did it affect people? And did people really enjoy it? So yeah, that's the reason why I started. It was really a challenge, a 1 year challenge, and I wanted to try something totally different. You know, set everything apart and see like what does my voice do, because it's a part of who you are as a woman, of course, and it's not to be used in a minute. Yeah, let me say, not in a bad way, but you can use it in a better way. Let's just say that. Yeah.
So,
It's yeah,
were
Sean.
you a little bit early on podcasting? Do you think it would have been different if you would have done it like in 2020 or this year?
It could be, but it also couldn't be, because when I started it, I was really figuring out, okay, how am I going to put an audio file online? What programs, what software should I use, and everything. I
Yeah.
had a little bit of experience with editing, of course, with film, but I was really like, okay, what works? What would people like? Because I also saw your podcast. I was Googling
Oh my
podcasts in
god.
Suriname before I
Oh my
started.
god.
I was researching everything, and I and I saw this interview with two ladies. I saw two on Soundtrack. No, it's Soundtrack. Is it called Soundtrack?
Yeah, it was, you saw one with Plu probably, and the one with Misha and
Yeah,
Yoni Brunswijk. That's true.
exactly.
For Suriname Online, I did two, and music artist of the month, I also did two. One with Street Soldiers and one with Kenny B. And it was in
Yeah, exactly.
2014, and I, but that's totally beside the point. But I never followed through, which is a shame.
I
It's
saw.
actually a
I
shame
saw.
because they were quite popular
Exactly.
at the time. But that's
Yeah,
why I
I
asked the
enjoyed
question
them.
too early, because you actually, of course, you had the editing skills. I actually, to be honest, because most people don't know this, in 2014 I did four podcasts, and two of the podcasts I did together with Top 40 Suriname. So I went to their studio, rented out their, it was a barter deal, but they kind of rented out me the studio for an hour, and I did
Mm-hmm.
these interviews, and then they edited for me. And the other podcast was together with Radio 10 Magic FM, and they also, I used their studio because at the time I wasn't able to edit anything, because we're talking
Mm-hmm.
2014 here. And now, last year, when we started the first podcast, there was, all of a sudden there was Anchor, and Anchor did everything
Mm-hmm.
for us. We could just upload the file; they would do the distribution to Spotify. They do everything, and all of a sudden, it's so much easier to do podcasts. And I was like, "Where
Yeah.
was this when I started out?" So that's where the
Yeah.
question comes from.
Yeah, I understand. And it's quite interesting because when people don't really know such a platform, it's really fun to experiment, right? Like what works and what doesn't work. Because I really tried a few things. I first put it on, wait, I think one of the platforms which you put it on, and also I tried YouTube after that. But
Yeah.
it's really weird. It's a movie, right? It's a picture and it plays, but you only hear like the podcast. So I noticed that that worked. Like people knew YouTube and they clicked on it and they listened to it. That's what they like. So it was really fun experimenting with that. Like, how can I keep people engaged without having to see me, basically, without movement, with only just listening. So that was very fun to experiment with.
Thanks for making the exception now that you're actually showing yourself as well. We're
Oh my
trying to,
gosh,
no,
really?
just kidding. But I think I quickly want to add that the reason I stopped with SoundCloud is
Yeah.
because of the storage. Is because
Mm.
You got
SoundCloud, the
one
free
hour.
edition,
It's
you
limited,
get
right?
amount of, yeah, you get 1 or 2 hours, and then when it's done, it's done. I mean, this podcast we would be able to upload one episode, and then it would be full.
Yeah.
Diego,
Yeah,
we're quickly
I
gonna do the question of Giano as well.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yes.
Let me pick it up. Yeah, Giano asks, are there plans for new seasons of Duur Passie? Asking for a fan. That's probably not him.
Well, he's actually saying, "I am that fan."
Yeah, okay. Should I
Yeah,
answer it?
yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that question, Giano. Well, I was thinking about starting again actually, but I think next year, because when I talk about something, it has to be of importance to me, right? It has just doesn't have to be about talking about something. So basically, like I said, I've been on this journey of discovering what is it about being a woman, right? And I just don't want to talk about something that's popular or that's happening right now. I want to talk about something that's timeless, and women of my age or younger and older experience nowadays. Like, what are certain topics we talk about every day or we think about every day, but we don't talk about every day. So when I have a great topic, it's also when I make a movie, it's the same. That's the only time I'll make it. Excuse my dogs. You're my dogs in the back, but they're excited to eat, I think. But basically, that's when I'm gonna make another episode. So it could be next year, I think, maybe.
So people are starting to dig into your past here in the comments at the moment. So we
Ooh.
got a follow up question by Gregory. I've seen you in a Surinamese music video about dance. Were you into dance music choreo back in the day, and will you ever do it again?
Surinamese music video. What kind of what music video was that? I made a short video when I was dancing in Paris with a girlfriend. The tarasha. It's a form of kizomba where you have to move certain body parts in a rhythmical way. I think he's talking about that one. Actually, I am. I just made one a few weeks ago where I was dancing with a friend of mine who's a really great dancer. His name is Romano, and we made a movie. Yeah, it's about 3 minutes or something, but that's where I'm showcasing lady styling. So it also adds to the feminine part about being a woman, of course. And it's not about only the sexual part of dancing. It's also about embracing following, because I think following is very hard. It's very hard. Following is harder than leading, actually, I think. To follow
Oh
somebody is
yes,
to
it is.
surrender. Yeah, especially
It
as a
is.
woman, right?
Yeah.
And that's been the
No, but
biggest
just with
complaint.
dance in general. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
one of the things you have to learn if you're. I don't dance kizomba. Let's
yeah.
correct straight away.
I
It
don't
Okay.
looks
dance,
really good.
period.
Kizomba is kind of a style for souk. Is it something you can explain?
No,
And how
no.
do you explain
Yeah.
kizomba?
Of course, of course. Kizomba, it started from Samba. Samba's from Africa. It's more traditional. It's like Biggie Ari music in Suriname, right? When
Okay.
you have Biggie Poku music, that's Samba. So Samba went to Europe, and Kizomba was formed because they added like different kind of music styles to it, like R&B, pop music, also soul music, and it was Kizomba. So basically, when all kind of people begin to dance a style, it transforms into different styles, right? It develops into something new. So the tarasha came out of kizomba. Tarasha is more danced on popular music nowadays, especially music from Holland. So that was funny. And that's the link between Amsterdam and Paris, actually, because Paris is the hub for Kizomba, but all the artists who make Kizomba music are in Amsterdam. So
Mm.
they traveled a lot, of course. But it's really funny how that existed, right? And they're still developing new styles around Kizomba. That's the fun thing about it. And I can, if I had to explain it to somebody really short, it would be adding your own flavor of dance. It doesn't matter if you do hip hop or something else into a few steps without having steps. So no counting. Like with salsa,
There's no step process.
there is
There's
a
no
step
step
process,
pro.
but no
Yeah.
counting. No counting.
Okay.
So that's the
You have to
difference.
feel the
So with
beat.
salsa, you have to feel the beat and really listen to the beat and then step. So it has no rules basically. And I think that's a fun thing with Kizomba.
Interesting. And
So Gregory is saying epic.
so you
Yeah.
just mentioned you made a second video that's out. So for
Yeah.
the people probably wanting to know where can they see that. So
Yeah.
and maybe
Yeah.
there's also another question here about Lobi Singi. So to address all the content you've created so far, where can people see Lobi Singi if they haven't seen it? Where can they
Yeah.
find your dance stuff? For the
Yeah.
podcast, where can they go to? So we address all this in
Well,
one go.
yeah, thanks for being interested in seeing the movie. The dancing videos will be online, I think, in about 3 weeks. I will be putting it on Facebook, I think, and on YouTube. So I'll just add the link, I think, when it's maybe to your listeners also. I can send the link, but I will be putting it up on YouTube on the Duur, the YouTube name Duur.
Okay.
So that's where you can find it. And the Lobi Singi movie, that's quite a story actually, because when I made the movie, I eventually thought I would put it on YouTube, right, for everybody to see. But in a way, the movie didn't feel done yet. Done. It didn't feel like I really had the final edit. And now it's been 5 years to 6 years further, but I still don't feel like it is the last edit. So we had a lot of scenes we filmed and we didn't use in the movie. So in a way, I'm still thinking of adding some scenes in the movie to make it really done. Is that a
You
thing
have
to
just
say?
have to make
Then
part
I'll put
two.
it.
You just
Yeah,
have
you
to make
should.
Maybe I
WC
should,
too.
right?
Yeah.
But because we had the idea for part two, actually. We are going to film it Enfer. We are going to Miami to film part two. So we already were writing part two, actually. So yeah, but we didn't
Yeah.
make the movie eventually. Yeah,
So
but
I've been
I'll,
trying.
I
I have to be
promise.
honest. I've been trying to watch Lobi Singi on the Fiado. I still have to ask
Yeah,
Wallace why I can't actually watch the movie. Maybe it's my
yeah,
own
that's
login
that.
problems. But is it is it
No,
is it available on Fiado, or is it because
no,
of the
it's
end edit
not.
that it's
No, it's
okay?
not actually. It's not available on Piano, not yet.
Okay.
So I think I'll be putting it up this year for sure, for sure. Yeah,
all right. So just a little more waiting, Stephanie, and then we can hopefully get a part two soon too. And I would
yeah,
say I think if people see it and they want more, gives you more reason to, and if more people
yeah,
want it, that's how the
yeah. You're
dynamic
right.
works. I think.
And I think also, sorry that I didn't mean to stop you, but just like Jean-Luc actually said, it felt like it wasn't the time yet to release the movie to the public. We had a lot of screenings at different places. We had at Tori Oso, we had at Torarica, a few viewings, but I feel I had to wait a little bit more also before I would really release it to the public, because I think at that time it wouldn't have made the impact it should have made, like maybe in a year or something. So I think maybe it wasn't the time also. It was really a feeling why I didn't release the movie yet. So yeah, I felt close to it this year, and it will be coming soon, I promise.
That's great.
Okay.
Speaking of
Yeah.
timing, I guess your timing with a lot of stuff has been. I'm maybe I'm saying it wrong. Maybe ahead of its time, like the movie 2016, podcasting 2019. So how do you get in a way ahead of the trends, and
Hmm.
how do you feel that it's right to
Yeah.
stop or go to the next thing? How
I
do you
think I
process
work a lot
timing?
on feeling. I work a lot on feeling, right? Sometimes it's hard to explain. But basically what I can say is this journey I've been following, like I told you, this why what is it being a woman? What is it being a man was very important to me. And I think I just followed on that. Because I think we as people in society don't really always fit the roles we have to fit. like we usually act in a way so people can accept us, right? So I wanted to really, really be myself. So everything I do is part of that journey. Like I really want to put stuff out that can be useless to people, and not just to be to have a certain reaction from people. That's not what I'm aiming for. So it has a lot to do with that, like my journey, and also like it has to mean something to somebody who's watching it, or else I shouldn't make it. So I think that's the path I've been following these 5 years, actually. Yeah,
That's pretty cool. It's more like an inward journey for yourself that happens to
yeah,
come across all these things you've done that
yeah,
coincidentally were like, pretty early on in that part of the industry or whatnot. Um,
yeah,
and that Randy says it here is the discovery of your journey. And I don't think that's something that stops, especially how we see you now, like moving uh, all in the fashion. So I think to wrap up my part, what is next for Suleika? And
yeah.
I guess one recommendation you would give to women, especially because you are
Mm-hmm.
very a strong woman who are
Oh, thank you.
maybe in a like at a point where you were like 5 6 years ago when you started this
Yeah.
journey. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, first my journey will be Margi, which I started last year. And also, I'm working on a movie right now. It's not part two of Lobi Singi, but it could be seen as a part two of Lobi Singi. It has a different name, but it's also about Suriname. So it's gonna be in Suriname. What I would advise people to do basically is to really be true to yourself. I think that's the important thing you have to do, and really challenge yourself on what you think, because like I said, we as women have to be like followers. We as women have to be nurturing, a few stuff. And usually when you start as a young woman, you get taught like you have to be independent, you have to do this on yourself and stuff. And we get into fights we don't have to get into. We challenge men, which we don't have to challenge men. We have to challenge ourselves, and be feminine, be a woman, and not try to do stuff men do. And I think that's the part that gets us into a lot of trouble in relationships, but also in real life. So if you try to be more of who you are, things will flow, and you just have to follow that, and it will come at a moment, like randomly, super randomly, the idea will come, and you will feel like this is what I need to do. But you have to try to really stay in your femininity as a woman. Of course, as a man, you have your masculinity, of course. But as a woman, what does it mean to be a woman? I think that is the first question you have to ask yourself. And then, who am I? And then just follow really what comes to you. I think that is the important thing to do, and not be afraid to fail. Because when I started a podcast, I also was like, okay, nobody's gonna listen, maybe, and the topics, I don't really know if people will listen. And but you have to trust that everything you feel like doing and it feels good is part of your journey, and it will end up in something. And it doesn't have to be what you envision, maybe as a lot of money, or a lot of fame, or maybe something else. It will end just the way it has to end for you. So you have to trust that process. And also getting further in life, you will notice like, oh, this is why I did this. Now I understand why I have to do this. So you will have no doubt. Basically, at a certain point, you will just know, I have to trust this blindly, because it will lead to something. And I think that is very special. And when you achieve something, when you did something blindly, that's the reward. And then you touch people, and then you create something. And that's thinking the sign of an artist, to shorten that. Yeah.
It's amazing because basically you not only answered Diego's question, but you also answered my last question, which would be because
Mm.
we struggle with this, and I tell this story a lot. We struggle with this a lot in Suriname. I think our generation is a little bit the last generation that was being brought up with, if you're going to study, you're going to have to study medicine, you're going to have to study economics, you're going to have to study law. That's what we learned. Like my generation learned those three topics. If you're going to study medicine, economics, law, then you're safe, then you're going to have a good job, people will respect you in the Surinamese society, and all other studies are like below those three. That's kind of how we were raised. And I think for a lot of people, also a lot of young professionals, things are really changing. We have the internet; it's more accessible now. But still, a lot of people are afraid, not just to fail, but afraid to disappoint others for making their own
Yes.
decision, going their own path, listening to what they would like to do, especially in the creative scene. I mean, the answer is always you can't earn money from film, you can't earn money from music, you can't earn money from poetry, from culture. So what, to elaborate a little bit more on your last answer, what advice would you give a young professional listening now who really wants to go into the creative scene but is worried like I won't be respected as much
Yeah.
if I would study economics or law or medicine?
That's a great question. I think you have to think the other way around. You have to think you have to start at the end and then go to the beginning instead of to the beginning and then to the end, right? So basically, you have a goal, you have a vision, right? You want to do this and this. Work from that way to the back. Okay, if I had this, what would I have done to get to that point? Instead of it's too far, I don't know what to start with. Like think you already have it. I think that's an important thing, to already feel like you have it. So when it happens, it's not a surprise. So I think working backwards is a good thing that also worked for me, not the other way around. So that's something. And I think especially I think you have to make a plan for yourself. Like how will I reach a certain goal? Right? A plan like starting from finance also, because finance is something we forget as artists usually. We have this big dream and we work everything out to the T and then we think, oh my God, I have no cash, right? But if you know exactly the amount you need to get something and somebody asks you that amount and can give you the money, you know the amount. You don't have to stop it. It's too much, but you have to just keep it in your mind, in the back of your mind. And then it will happen in a way. But I think the hardest thing is to keep being motivated. I think that's the challenge, the motivation part. Like when it takes some time, like why? What do I have to do to keep on going on? So I think that's the part when some people stop chasing a dream or going after a dream. I think it's the most motivation part. And you can read everything you like. You can watch movies where people motivate you, but it's only for a moment, right? So basically, you have to have a bigger vision. It's not only I want to make a Marvel movie. It has to be why do I want to make a Marvel movie? Why? Is it because I want to show myself that I can make a Marvel movie? Or is it about people actually seeing, hey, he is a good filmmaker? That's not a purpose which I would recommend. I would think, okay, I want to inspire people that something is possible. That's a whole nother way of seeing something like this, instead of it's about validation, right? Because that's what most of us want, validation. So basically, think of a bigger picture. And sometimes it's not the Marvel movie you're supposed to make, but it's the independent movie you're supposed to make in Guyana or Brazil. It could be something like that, and that will be your biggest work. So basically, think about why do I want something, and if it's for selfish reasons, and I mean like getting acknowledgement, it's short term. I will promise you, it will happen, and you'll be disappointed basically, or not fulfilled in the best way. So that's something I would recommend.
Quick final question. You probably answered this here and there already, but specifically, this question came from a friend, and you've probably also who you've also worked with. But what
Yeah.
sets your soul on fire to keep you motivated?
Oh, great question. I love that. It makes me think.
Did you add a
Well,
sound edit into that, Diego?
I don't know. No.
It's almost like I heard a heartbeat. Put your fire into motion. Toot, 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 toot.
that's a great question. I love that. I think for me right now, it's my mom actually. One of the things is my mom, but also when I talk to people and they get they're demotivated, like they're sad or something. I know I feel some kind of energy in me awakening. Like I want to help somebody, or I want to make something with those people. Each I have when I talk to friends sometimes, it really does something to me when somebody doesn't believe in what he's doing, or doesn't see a way out. and I think that those two things really really make me want to move. But it's my mom at the number one place. She's really special to me, so she's really an important factor in my life. And what gets me like waking up every day, basically, like doing what I'm supposed to do, is just fate. It's really fate, blind fate, because sometimes you don't know if it's going to work, right? And it's scary. It's super scary, right? You're like, oh my God, anything can happen. But it's really blind fate. And also trust that even if it doesn't work out the way you envisioned it, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. So trusting something unseen is one of my motivations, actually. And just really saying to myself, like, there is something I'm supposed to do on this earth, because one of my purposes, it's really dying empty. And dying empty meaning I want to have done everything I'm supposed to do. So I travel light when I go away, right? So I want to put myself physically, mentally, emotionally in that state so I can be used to tell a story or do something to get into that vibe. And that's where the healthy living, where the emotional well being comes into play. So when you create an environment that you can do what you're supposed to do, physically, mentally, and emotionally, you will do what you have to do. It's really the law of nature, basically. So yeah.
Wow, that is
That explains
beautifully
the
said.
answer why she's done so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really really interesting perspective on life. Thank you so much for sharing that, Suleika. We have to ask one final question. If people watch this, well, if people listen to this, where can they connect with you? Which platform would you like to allow people that are listening in to contact you on?
Yeah, so basically, I think Facebook is a good platform. I have a few pages. I have Margie, of course, Margi Lifestyle, and I have the Duur Passie page. And also, you can add me on Facebook under my name, Suleigha Winkel, and that's where you can contact me, basically.
Awesome. We'll add those in the description. So if you guys check in later, also the website Margi Lifestyle, which is beautifully done. By the way, I
Thank
could
you.
see the set design and everything to
uh,
the T in that website. So compliments to that. Um, and as always, guys, this episode will be released on the podcasting platforms on Saturdays. So share with your friends, share with the women in your life, especially. Um, and yeah, I think that is a wrap from our side. Suleika, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And yeah, it's been over an hour again, as always. So
really?
yeah.
Yeah.
So with that being
Yeah.
said, Jean-Luc, any closing thoughts, and then you can roll us out.
I think this comment said it very well. We'll leave you guys with the last comment by Randy, the discovery of your journey. That was what
Mhm.
today was really about. This was Social Confoes. We'll be back live next Tuesday at 9 o'clock, Surinamese time. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.